In the first few episodes of this series, I failed to deal with some of the basic functionality of Hitfilm. One feature I didn't describe fully is the text panel. In this episode, I want to correct that. We tend to visit this panel only briefly to change font, font size, font color, and maybe to apply an outline and to justify our text. But there's so much more to this panel. Let's delve into all those other parameters that are so frequently overlooked. I'm not going to be using the trimmer panel, so I'll reduce it to allow all the text panel parameters to be seen. Let's start from the top and work down. Most of these parameters will be familiar and don't require describing in detail. What I will do, though, is to comment where particular parameters aren't so self-explanatory. Although the use of the font selection drop-down list is obvious, what's not so obvious is that there's a quick way of navigating to the font that you want. With the list open, simply type the first character of the font name, and the first font in the list with that initial character will be highlighted. You can then scroll down further to find the one that you want. Don't type any more than the first character, as subsequent characters will be used to search. For instance, if I want Times New Roman and I type TI, I'll get impact. Next is the font style drop-down list. The style options available will depend upon the font selected. For example, with Arial, there are 5 styles. With MS Gothic, there is only one. Underneath the font style list is the font color swatch. Click this to open up the color control dialog. There's a lot to this dialog, so I want to deal with this a little later on. At the side of the color swatch, there's an eyedropper icon, sometimes called a pipette icon. This allows any colour on the screen to be selected. What's not obvious with this icon is that you have to hold the left mouse button down, drag the mouse over the colour you want, then release the button. To demonstrate this, I'll need to disable my cursor highlight temporarily. Underneath the colour swatch is the Add Outline button. As implied, use this button to give the selected text an outline. This will expose more parameters. The first determines the width of the outline in pixels. The colour of the outline is determined by the colour swatch, with the eyedropper available for selecting a screen colour. At the side of the eyedropper is the icon for deleting the outline. Underneath the outline thickness parameter is a drop-down list. This has 3 modes, which affect the way the outline is applied to the characters. Its default mode is overfill, which applies the outline to the outside of the character. Underfill applies it to the inside. Centered, unsurprisingly, half inside and half outside. Multiple outlines can be added to the selected text layer using the Add Outline button. I don't know how many outlines can be added, but it's a lot. It's worth noting that, unlike font color, outline color doesn't have an alpha channel, so it's not possible to change its transparency. Underneath the outline parameter, there are 5 parameters that control the overall look of the text in the layer. Some will be familiar, the line and character spacing, for example. Some won't, such as the character X and Y scale controls. These will scale selected characters horizontally and vertically. The 5th parameter controls the amount that each character deviates vertically from the baseline. Below these are 8 icons that apply particular formatting to a selected character or characters. The icons indicate the formatting options available. The first 4 icons are independently selected. By that I mean if one is selected and you select another one, the first one will be deselected. The remainder can be multiple selected. Now let's look at the font color dialog. A lot of what's in this won't be applicable in normal use. However, for completeness, I'm going to describe each section to the best of my ability. The basic colors section is fairly self-explanatory. Click on a colored tile, click OK, and that color will be applied to any selected character or characters. Underneath the basic colors section is a button marked Pick Screen Color. Click this button and a crosshair cursor will appear. Use this cursor to select a color from anywhere on your screen. The current screen coordinates of the cursor are displayed, along with an instruction for terminating the operation. After choosing a colour, left-click to select it. Because my cursor highlight is active, the resultant colour is a mixture of the two, but you get the idea. The Custom Colours section contains 16 tiles that can be used to create custom colours. To save a custom colour, first click on the tile that you want to use, then select a colour using any of the parameters. Finally, click the button marked Add to Custom Colours. Note that it's not possible to delete custom colours. They can only be overwritten. For this reason, it's important to select a tile that's available before clicking the Add to Custom Colours button. You could end up overwriting one of your previously saved important colours. Note also that any custom colours saved are available until overwritten. Going up to the top again, there's the main colour swatch. This is where you can select a colour variation that may not be available in the basic colours section. The slider at the side controls the colour intensity. At the bottom middle is the currently selected colour display. This is the colour that will be applied to the selected text when the OK button is clicked. Displayed at the bottom right are the values for the various colour channels applicable to the currently selected colour. The three controls on the left are hue, saturation and value. How these values relate to the selected colour is beyond the scope of this tutorial. What I will say is this: hue defines the colour selected, value defines the lightness or darkness, and saturation defines the intensity of the colour. The three controls on the right are more familiar. They refer to the red, green and blue channels of the selected colour. If you understand basic RGB colour theory, you'll know that mixtures of these three primary colours create different colours. For instance, set all three to 0 and you get black. Set all three to 255 and you get white. Underneath the RGB values is the value for the alpha channel. This sets the transparency of the colour, with 255 being fully opaque and 0 being fully transparent. Below that is a parameter you may be unfamiliar with. It's the HTML colour value and is a 6-figure hexadecimal value prefixed with the hash sign. The 6 figures consist of 3 pairs, each pair representing the red, green and blue channels. Their values range from 0 to 255 in hexadecimal. For example, the colour blue has RGB values of 0, 0 and 255. So the HTML value for blue will be hash 0000FF. The parameters available in the paragraph section depend upon how the text has been created. Let me explain what I mean by that. When the text tool is selected in the editor, or a text layer is added in a composite shot, text can be created in one of two ways. Typing directly into the viewer panel creates what's called open text. If you instead left-click and hold, then draw a rectangle, this becomes a text box. I'll deal with open text first, which is sometimes referred to as point text. This is probably how text is entered in the majority of cases. You select the text tool, or add a text layer in a composite shot, then start typing. Unfortunately, there are several disadvantages with this method of adding text. One of the disadvantages is that there isn't a mechanism for wrapping the text. If you keep entering text without entering a carriage return, it will just carry on off the screen to the right. This is a section of the Gettysburg Address where the lines aren't wrapped. You can see that they extend beyond the right side of the display. I'll get to the other disadvantages shortly. Now let's look at the parameters available for open text. The first thing to note is that some of the parameters are greyed out. This is because the availability of parameters is dependent upon the text input mode. At the top left of the section are three familiar controls. These are available for both open text and text boxes and determine the justification of selected paragraphs. Here we have another of the disadvantages of open text. These controls don't function in the conventional manner. If you select a paragraph, then select Center Alignment, you'll find that the paragraph shifts left. This is because the paragraph is now centered on the horizontal datum of the text layer. This statement requires an explanation. When you enter open text, it's bounded by a box. It's not a text box, it's a text layer. The left edge of the text layer is at a certain horizontal location, and this position is called the Layer X position. This position can be seen in the Controls panel. It's the X value in the position parameter. The Center Alignment control first center justifies the paragraph, then shifts the center to this location. To correct this, you need to enter 0 for the location parameter X value. This will shift the text to the correct centered position. The problem with this, as you can see, is that it moves the rest of the text off to the right. Similarly, the right alignment control justifies the paragraph text on the right and shifts it left to the Layer X position. To correct this, the location X value in the Controls panel needs its minus sign removing. Another disadvantage lies with the parameter labelled first line indentation. In open text mode, this parameter doesn't function. To have first line indentation implies that the text will automatically line wrap, and this doesn't happen with open text. All that happens when this parameter is changed is that the selected text is shifted either right or left. The other two parameters available for this mode are the gap before paragraph and the gap after paragraph parameters. These simply expand or contract the space between adjacent paragraphs. Because this text has been imported as open text, there's no line wrapping. This means that every line is interpreted as a paragraph. If I select only one line, then adjust these two parameters, you'll see that only that line is affected. So, you can now see why I say that open text is not the ideal method for entering text. The better method is to use a text box. Text entered this way is sometimes referred to as paragraph text. As I previously mentioned, in the editor or in a text layer in a composite shot, a text box is created by left-clicking and dragging in the viewer. In both cases, the text tool has to be selected to do this. I'll now paste a section of the same text, but this time it has no carriage returns. You can see now that the lines are wrapped within the text box. When a text box is created, a further 11 parameters become available. Let's look at the parameters for controlling the text indentation. These are left, right, top, and bottom indentation. These values determine how the text is indented with respect to the text box. For example, if I increase the left indentation parameter, the text block shifts right. You can see that the more I increase this value, the lines of text shift downwards. This is because the text is auto-wrapping at the right side of the text box. A similar result occurs if I increase the right indentation value. The top and bottom indentation parameters affect the gap between the top and bottom of the text and the top and bottom of the text box. The three parameters to the right affect the vertical alignment of the text. If the text block doesn't fill the text box, as in this case, these parameters can be used to move the text block vertically within the text box. Lastly, we come to the four text justification parameters. These affect how words in a line of text are spaced within the text box. The left justify alignment parameter causes any line not terminated by a carriage return to expand to the full width of the text box. It does this by spacing the words out in that line. The center and right justify alignment parameters perform similar functions. The final alignment parameter is the justify alignment parameter. This causes all selected lines of text that contain 2 or more words to expand and fill the width of the text box. Here's a few more points to note. If you want to change the text mode, select the text tool, then right-click on the text and choose Convert to Point Text or Convert to Paragraph Text. Text attributes can be modified for selected individual characters or for selected groups of characters. With the text tool selected, the text box is colored blue. At the bottom right corner of the text box, there's a small circle. Clicking and holding on that circle will allow you to resize the box. Doing so will reorganize the text wrapping. The box can be moved or rotated using the on-screen control when the selection tool is selected. As with any other element, the box can be manipulated using the parameters in the controls panel. When I was planning this episode, I soon realized that although the basic parameters were fairly self-explanatory, most of the others weren't. My apologies for the episode's length, but I hope you can appreciate that it's impossible to fully explain things in a short period of time. If you're listening to me say these words, thanks for staying with me. Join me again next time. Until then, bye for now.